Ma'am, this seat isn't for you. Raymond Long's voice cut through the first-class cabin, sharp enough to turn heads. The plane hummed softly around them, air vents whispering, overhead bins clicking shut, a low vibration running through the aisle, but his words landed louder than anything else. He stood beside Virginia Robinson's seat in his crisp pilot uniform, arms crossed, chin lifted, eyes scanning her like a mistake that needed correcting. Virginia didn't move. She remained seated, back straight against the wide leather seat, a polished folder resting calmly on her lap. Her expression stayed neutral. Controlled. As if the comment hadn't reached her at all. Nearby passengers paused mid-motion. A man froze while tightening his seatbelt. A woman stopped adjusting her scarf. A few glances flicked up from phones, then away again, as if looking too long might pull them into something uncomfortable. The cabin felt smaller now, tighter, like the air itself was holding still. Raymond leaned in slightly, lowering his voice but letting it carry just enough. "First class gets confusing," he said, a faint laugh slipping out. "Happens more than you'd think." The tone was light, almost playful, but the message was clear. He expected compliance. An apology. Movement. Virginia's fingers rested lightly on the folder. No shaking. No rush. She lifted her eyes to meet his, calm and steady, offering nothing he could push against. The contrast was stark. His posture pressed forward. Hers didn't yield. A few rows back, someone shifted uncomfortably. Another passenger cleared his throat, staring hard at the seat back in front of him. No one spoke. No one stepped in. The silence stretched, thick with judgment and curiosity. Raymond straightened, confidence growing in the quiet. "Let's not make this awkward," he added, glancing around as if the cabin itself were on his side. "I'll need you to move." Virginia finally responded, but not the way he expected. She didn't argue. Didn't reach for her boarding pass. She simply adjusted the folder on her lap and glanced at her phone, slow and deliberate, as if checking the time rather than defending her place. Have you ever watched someone get questioned in public and felt that knot in your stomach, wondering if anyone would step up? What would you have done in that seat? Comment below. Raymond let out a short chuckle, mistaking her calm for surrender. The cabin stayed quiet. Too quiet. And then Virginia looked up again, voice level, measured. "Captain," she said softly, "I'm seated exactly where I'm supposed to be." The smile on his face faltered, just slightly. Passengers shifted. Eyes lingered. Something in the air changed. No one in that cabin knew it yet, but this wasn't a moment that would end with someone moving seats. It was the start of a reversal, slow, quiet, and impossible to stop once it began. And the plane hadn't even left the ground yet. Virginia sat still, her back straight, fingers lightly resting on the leather folder. Raymond Long shifted in his captain's chair, smirk fading slightly as he tried to maintain control. His eyes darted to the other passengers, noting their glances, their whispered murmurs. They were watching him, watching her, and he didn't like the attention. He adjusted his tie, cleared his throat, and leaned closer. "Are you sure you're in the right place, ma'am?" His tone was sharp but forced polite, like a dog pretending it's not growling. She looked up slowly, meeting his gaze without a flicker of fear. "Yes," she said evenly, calm and steady. Her voice carried through the background hum of the gate announcements, clear and measured. The smirk he had counted on faded just a little more, replaced by impatience. Raymond tapped a finger on the counter, scanning the boarding area, as if seeking support from the staff or passengers. Some glanced away, others shifted in their seats. He was losing the narrative he had thought was his. Passengers leaned subtly toward each other, whispering. "Did you see that?" One murmured. Another shook her head, fingers tightening around a bag strap. The air was thick with tension, eyes flicked between Raymond's rising agitation and Virginia's unbroken calm. Each glance, each small movement reinforced the imbalance, the captain's growing frustration and her quiet, almost invisible authority. Raymond straightened again, tried to flex policy. "First class fills fast, ma'am." "Everyone wants priority," he said, forcing a laugh. It landed badly, awkward and loud. Virginia didn't react. She folded her hands over her folder, maintaining perfect composure. He leaned over, attempting to project dominance with gestures and slight scoffs. Passengers noticed the difference. A woman tightened her scarf, a man cleared his throat, shifting uneasily. The quiet defiance of Virginia Robinson was more striking than any loud protest. Virginia typed lightly on her phone, eyes darting to the screen, checking messages, timing, contacts, prepared but restrained. Have you ever seen someone underestimated and thought they had no leverage? Seen the world assume weakness because someone doesn't raise their voice? Comment below. Follow to witness how courage emerges under pressure. Some people would yell, storm out, or cause a scene. Not her. Her strategy was patience, timing, and precision. Raymond tapped a finger again, brow furrowing. He leaned closer, lowering his voice but not enough to avoid the passenger's ears. "I'd hate for someone to think you're above protocol," he said, half joking, half warning. Virginia's eyes stayed fixed on him, calm and resolute. The tension stretched, silent yet charged, like static electricity. Every second he wasted trying to assert control tightened the spotlight on his overconfidence. Passengers shifted, some subtly nodding toward Virginia, others uncertain where their loyalty or judgment belonged. A child's mother whispered, glancing at Raymond, then back to Virginia. No one moved. No one intervened. And yet, the air itself seemed to tilt, shifting power toward her through sheer composure. Raymond's jaw tightened. He tried one last smirk, but it didn't land. The momentum had changed, invisibly, but unmistakably. The stage was set for what came next. Virginia's quiet certainty and unbroken presence were now the central force in the room, challenging authority without a word of complaint. Something tells her calm isn't weakness. But what happens next? The question lingered in every passenger's mind, building suspense as the gate continued its hum around the unfolding drama. Virginia's eyes flicked briefly to her folder, then to the crowd around the gate, calm yet calculating. The hum of the terminal seemed distant as flashes of her past ran through her mind. She remembered early mornings at the law firm, long nights preparing case files, the countless times she had faced discrimination in boardrooms and courtrooms. Each challenge had hardened her resolve, taught her patience, and sharpened her instincts. Certificates lined the walls of her office, reminders of battles won and regulations enforced. She remembered mentoring young lawyers of color, guiding them through systems that rarely bent toward fairness. She recalled the time an airline dismissed a formal complaint she had filed, only to reverse its decision after she persisted, calmly but firmly. That patience, that strategy, had become her armor. Back at the gate, Raymond Long's voice cut through the air again. "Ma'am, you really don't belong here," he said, attempting humor, but the words carried authority, something he thought he owned. Passengers glanced nervously at each other, the tension almost visible in the space between them. Virginia did not flinch. She had seen bigger stakes, higher egos, and worse assumptions. She folded her hands over her folder and breathed evenly. Every micro-movement was deliberate, every glance measured. The young co-pilot, Zachary Owens, hesitated nearby, sensing the uneven power. He glanced at Raymond, then at Virginia, unsure whether to step in or remain silent. Virginia, aware of every movement, maintained her calm. She did not need to explain herself yet, her history had taught her the value of timing. Past victories were quiet, methodical, never noisy. Yet their impact was undeniable. Her phone buzzed lightly in her bag, messages confirming meetings, calls, and legal consultations. A subtle signal to the staff that she was not powerless, only strategic. Passengers noticed her composed demeanor, contrasting with the captain's faltering confidence. Whispers of awe and confusion passed among those who had been observing, though no one dared speak aloud. The weight of authority and the expectation of obedience had shifted imperceptibly. She had faced worse confrontations, aggressive executives, systemic bias, and subtle sabotage, but this public display demanded patience and precision. Each second she remained seated, each measured breath, reinforced her quiet dominance. The room seemed to lean toward her, drawn by the contrast between her calm and the captain's rising agitation. She's faced worse. But will this gate conflict break her? The question lingered in the minds of passengers, a silent suspense stretching across the terminal. Something significant was about to happen, a subtle shift that only those paying attention could sense. The confrontation was far from over, yet the seeds of reversal had been planted. Have you witnessed moments where calm courage outweighs loud arrogance? Share your story below. Raymond Long's smirk widened as he leaned closer, his voice carrying over the terminal hum. "Ma'am, I really hope you understand the rules here," he said, his tone sharp, each word a deliberate challenge. Passengers shifted in their seats, murmurs rippling quietly through the crowd. Virginia Robinson didn't react beyond a slow blink, her posture unwavering, her hands resting on the leather folder. She had learned long ago that reaction could betray more than silence ever could. He gestured toward the boarding line with an exaggerated sweep of his hand, as if drawing invisible boundaries that only he had the authority to enforce. "Policies change fast, you know," he added, leaning over a nearby seat. "First class fills quickly, mistakes happen all the time." The laughter that followed was not light or amused, it was sharp, pointed, meant to humiliate. Eyes flicked toward Virginia, then away, uncertain how to respond. Nearby, the gate supervisor arrived, stepping lightly, attempting to assess the situation without drawing attention. He raised an eyebrow at Raymond, who waved him off with a dismissive jerk of his hand. The passengers sensed tension rising, some pulling out phones, unsure whether to document the confrontation or remain passive. Virginia's gaze remained level, serene, but internally she catalogued every micro-expression, every shift of weight, every subtle change in body language. She knew the stakes, a misstep could escalate the scene into chaos, but a measured response could shift the power balance. Raymond's voice hardened, repeating instructions with precision, relying on policy terminology he barely understood, trying to assert control over a situation that increasingly slipped beyond his grasp. "Ma'am, I really need you to confirm your seat," he said, forcing the words through a thin veneer of civility. The passengers collectively held their breath. A child's soft question was swallowed in the tension, the terminal felt smaller, focused entirely on this confrontation. Virginia's hand moved slightly, as if adjusting her folder, but it was more than a movement, it was a signal, a calculated pause. She had faced arrogance before, from executives and attorneys alike, and she knew the power of patience. Every breath was controlled, every muscle relaxed yet ready. The authority in her demeanor was quiet but unmistakable, radiating outward in a way that unsettled Raymond without a single word. Zachary Owens, the younger co-pilot, hovered nearby, aware of the imbalance and sensing that any misstep could escalate the scene further. He glanced at Raymond, then at Virginia, caught in the invisible tension that had settled over the gate. Passengers shifted in their seats, whispering among themselves, eyes darting to the unfolding drama. No one spoke aloud, but the air hummed with anticipation. Raymond's agitation grew. He started repeating himself, a slight quiver in his tone betraying his frustration. Each attempt to assert dominance was met with Virginia's unwavering calm. The contrast was stark, almost painful to witness, his loud, overbearing presence against her composed, measured restraint. The tension stretched, thick as fog, wrapping around each passenger and bystander. Some people glanced at their phones, unsure whether to record, unsure if intervention was warranted. Others stared silently, caught in the magnetic pull of authority and defiance. Raymond's public display had failed to intimidate, instead, it revealed the fragility behind the mask of entitlement. Virginia's calm was a shield and a weapon, precise and unyielding. The moment lingered. Raymond's voice rose slightly, a mix of frustration and incredulity. He did not understand that authority without wisdom falters when faced with patience and composure. Virginia's eyes met his for a fraction of a second, steady and unwavering. The passengers collectively leaned forward in attention, sensing the moment's weight. How far will he push before someone intervenes? The unspoken question hung in the air, a silent suspense threading through the crowd. Eyes shifted toward the gate supervisor again. Whispers multiplied. Something was about to change, but no one could yet predict the precise moment of reversal. The tension was unbearable, and every spectator felt it pulse in their chest. Ever seen quiet defiance spark change? Comment below and subscribe now to watch the story unfold. Virginia Robinson's fingers hovered briefly over her phone, her eyes scanning the terminal, the passengers, the gate staff. Raymond Long continued his tirade, citing policies and procedural jargon, each word loaded with assumed authority. "Ma'am, I'm just following protocol," he said, tone tight, his smirk fading slightly as frustration crept in. "You need to comply or we may have to escalate this further." He glanced around, expecting nods of agreement, but noticed subtle hesitations, fleeting glances of doubt from his crew and the gate staff. She remained seated, composed, her expression unreadable. The crowd was divided, some leaned forward, captivated, others leaned back, anxious. Virginia's calm was magnetic, forcing everyone to process the injustice in real time. The passengers weren't just watching a gate conflict, they were witnessing a delicate battle of power, judgment, and composure. Each shift in posture, every micro-expression of the staff, amplified the tension. Raymond waved a hand toward a cluster of documents, policies printed and highlighted, as if they were shields for his ego. "See here. Rules are rules. There's nothing personal," he insisted, though the venom in his tone contradicted the words. A young flight attendant, hiding a phone behind her back, exchanged nervous glances with a colleague, unsure whether to intervene or stay silent. Virginia didn't flinch. Every subtle action, from tapping her folder to the slow adjustment of her blazer, communicated unshakable confidence. Passengers shifted in their seats. A mother clutched her child's hand, tension threading through their fingers. A businessman adjusted his tie, trying to appear unaffected. The hum of the terminal grew, punctuated by soft beeps and distant announcements, all fading into a backdrop for this silent war of wills. Raymond's voice rose incrementally, and yet Virginia remained poised, breathing deliberately, her movements deliberate but unassuming. She typed rapidly, discreetly, her thumbs dancing across the phone screen under the folder, signaling action to an unseen ally. Every keystroke was purposeful, every tap a quiet orchestration of a plan only she fully understood. The tension in Raymond's shoulders tightened, the casual arrogance he wielded like a weapon began to crack. Subtle cues, the hitch in his breath, the flick of his eyes toward the gate supervisor, betrayed his growing unease. Whispers among passengers increased, speculation quietly buzzing. Some assumed a resolution was imminent, others feared escalation. Virginia's strategy was invisible yet potent, she didn't need to shout or argue. Her composure alone reshaped the energy around her, tilting the balance, planting seeds of doubt in those who assumed dominance guaranteed control. Her eyes scanned the crowd again, acknowledging, briefly, the silent witnesses. The weight of observation hung over the terminal. She was aware that every reaction, every hesitation, would feed into the unfolding outcome. Raymond's repeated attempts to regain control only underscored his vulnerability. Authority without understanding, without respect for the unseen dynamics, was brittle. Have you ever felt underestimated or dismissed? The scene pulsed with anticipation, the quiet tension now nearly tangible. Virginia's patience is a weapon, her silence a statement louder than any words Raymond could muster. The bystanders hold their breath, waiting for the shift that will break the fragile balance. Subscribe to witness the turning point. Virginia lifted her folder slightly, revealing a glimpse of a card tucked neatly inside. Raymond Long was still speaking, still projecting control, still unaware that the balance of power was quietly slipping from his grasp. He waved a hand toward the boarding area, expecting compliance, yet his voice carried less conviction. Each sentence he spoke sounded rehearsed now, lacking the authority he assumed. Her fingers hovered over her phone for a moment longer, then she pressed a sequence of keys deliberately, her movements measured. A subtle signal to the gate supervisor, a quick glance toward a nearby official, tiny gestures that carried weight far beyond their size. Passengers noticed something shift in the atmosphere. Some leaned forward, sensing a change, while others, unsure what was happening, glanced around, waiting. The terminal felt smaller, the tension tighter, every footstep echoing like a drumbeat in slow motion. Raymond's smirk faltered. He gestured toward the policies again, as if the documents could shield him from the growing scrutiny. "I'm following protocol," he repeated, but his tone lacked the earlier sharpness. Sweat gleamed briefly on his brow, a small betrayal of his frustration. Virginia's eyes met his, steady, unwavering, calm, a quiet assertion that she held the upper hand. Witnesses began to shift. A couple of passengers straightened, sensing the subtle reversal. One teenager, holding a phone at chest level, lowered it slightly, unsure whether to record or watch silently. Virginia didn't speak loudly. Her movements remained minimal, controlled, leaning back, adjusting her folder, and subtly showing her credentials. Her quiet confidence was impossible to ignore. The gate supervisor approached cautiously, eyes scanning Virginia, then back to Raymond. The subtle gestures Virginia had made were enough to prompt recognition. The supervisor's posture shifted ever so slightly, signaling attention, acknowledgement, and impending action. Raymond's attempt at dominance wavered, his gestures now abrupt, uncertain. Every passenger felt it. The energy of authority had quietly realigned. Virginia's restraint, previously a passive stance, now acted as a catalyst. The terminal buzzed with the silent suspense of anticipation. The tide was turning, yet no one outside Virginia fully understood the orchestration unfolding. Every glance, every pause, every breath played into her strategy, and every subtle move from Raymond was a confirmation that his perceived dominance was slipping. The shift was nearly complete. Her patience had become a weapon, her composure, a force stronger than Raymond's loud declarations. Observers, now caught between awe and disbelief, realized that true authority could be quiet, strategic, and unshakable. Have you ever turned the tide in silence? Comment below. Don't miss how strategy and persistence tip the scales. Subscribe to see the full countermove. She's about to reclaim control, will he notice? Virginia's eyes lifted, calm and steady, as the senior airport official stepped through the lobby doors. Raymond Long's voice had been trying to assert control, but it faltered the moment recognition struck. He froze mid-gesture, his smirk gone, replaced by a flicker of disbelief. Passengers and staff around them paused, sensing a change that even they couldn't fully name. The official moved with quiet authority, a measured step toward Virginia. No shouting, no dramatics, just the weight of position and recognition. Virginia offered a small nod, almost imperceptible, acknowledging the silent communication. Raymond's body tensed, gestures jerky now, hands hovering uncertainly. His previous confidence had been loud and public, now it was fragile, wavering under the weight of unseen knowledge. Boarding passes were verified. A clerk confirmed her seat, scanning the details, while Raymond's repeated attempts at policy enforcement fell flat against the presence of someone who truly commanded respect. The terminal hummed, passengers craning their necks, noticing the subtle shift. Some whispered to one another, glancing from Virginia to the official, then back to the pilot. Their confusion blended with awe as the authority balance realigned in plain sight. Virginia kept her composure, lips pressed lightly together, hands resting over her folder. The official checked documents, eyes flicking between Virginia and Raymond. Raymond attempted to interject, a small cough escaping, but the official's calm gaze silenced him. There was no anger in her demeanor, no grand announcement, just competence, presence, and the quiet authority of someone accustomed to navigating high stakes. Witnesses' reactions varied. A businesswoman across the terminal raised an eyebrow, processing the reversal. A young man whispered to his friend, phone half lowered, caught between curiosity and respect. The audience felt the shift without a word being spoken. The quiet power of patience, preparation, and unshakable confidence became apparent, a lesson in authority that was understated yet undeniable. The atmosphere was electric but measured, suspense hanging in the air. Raymond's posture collapsed slowly as reality dawned, and Virginia's restrained triumph became visible in micro-gestures, a straightened spine, a calm gaze, the gentle closing of her folder. The terminal, filled moments ago with tension and doubt, now witnessed the invisible hand of strategy quietly reclaim control. When the truth emerges, what would you do? What would you do if the truth suddenly changed everything? Comment below. Don't miss how Virginia's calm decisiveness tips the scales. Subscribe and turn on notifications to follow every move. She's poised, ready to move forward, but will Raymond recover or falter completely? Boarding resumed slowly, the terminal alive with the low murmur of passengers adjusting to the new order. Eyes flicked from Virginia Robinson to Raymond Long, who now moved cautiously, unsure of how to regain authority without drawing further attention. Whispers ran like threads through the crowd, subtle nods of recognition passing between travelers who had witnessed the tension dissolve. Virginia remained seated, composed, her folder resting neatly on her lap. She adjusted her posture slightly, signaling neither triumph nor arrogance, just presence. The shift in power was undeniable. Raymond tried to assert control again, clearing his throat, but the subtle but unmistakable authority of the senior official had already tipped the balance. Each movement he made now carried hesitation, each word measured, restrained, as if he were testing the air before speaking. Passengers craned their necks, catching the exchange in fleeting glances. A young mother whispered to her child, as if explaining that what they were witnessing was more than protocol, it was a quiet reclaiming of respect and order. Some began to smile subtly, others shook their heads in disbelief. Every face in the boarding area became a part of the tableau of recognition, acknowledging the reversal without needing anyone to announce it. The atmosphere felt charged yet disciplined. Virginia's calmness radiated outward, infusing the space with tension that was both relieved and anticipatory. The hum of boarding, the clatter of wheels, the soft shuffle of feet all underscored the unspoken narrative. The pilot's dominance had been quietly replaced by competence, authority, and strategic patience. Raymond's gaze faltered. He glanced toward the official, then back at Virginia, as if searching for a lifeline that wasn't there. The passengers sensed the imbalance, the subtle yet undeniable correction. Conversations paused, phones were lowered as if to respect the scene unfolding in real time. The terminal had become an arena where power was measured not by volume or aggression but by quiet control and precise action. The realization spread slowly, like ripples across still water. Virginia's small gestures, straightening her blazer, touching her folder, became symbols of calm authority. The audience felt vindication swell, satisfaction in watching bias and arrogance meet measured poise. The shift was complete but understated, leaving onlookers to process the moment silently, individually, yet collectively. Ever seen someone quietly reclaim power? Comment below. Subscribe and turn on notifications to witness the ripple of change as it unfolds in real time. The terminal was alive with quiet awe, but the full impact of what just happened was only beginning to settle. What would follow next for Raymond Long? Raymond Long's shoulders sagged as he watched the senior official leave the gate area, his composure fractured. He had expected compliance, not challenge, not exposure. Around him, the staff shifted subtly, some avoiding eye contact, others murmuring in quiet recognition of the unfolding reversal. Papers shuffled, emails pinged quietly on devices, and the authority of the system began to assert itself without fanfare. Virginia Robinson remained seated, her hands folded over her leather folder, exuding calm and certainty. Her eyes scanned the cabin, noting passengers' reactions, the slow nods, the subtle smiles, the quiet respect. Each reaction reinforced the power of patience and strategy over noise and aggression. The contrast between her composed authority and Raymond's flustered posturing was stark. Every small gesture, her straight posture, calm breathing, minimal movements, underscored control and competence. Micro-expressions told the story, gate agents registering relief, bystanders processing the moment of accountability, and Raymond struggling to regain dominance he had never truly held. Documents on the counter displayed verification of policies, credentials, and procedural compliance. The hum of the terminal continued, yet each sound carried weight in the shared space of silent observation. The atmosphere was thick with the recognition that respect had been restored without spectacle. An official quietly walked past, confirming the internal review had begun. Raymond attempted a half-smile, a reflexive gesture, but it faltered under the weight of the unfolding consequences. The audience witnessed subtle power recalibration, a system asserting fairness without shouting, without dramatics. Engagement deepened as viewers noted how quiet, calculated actions contrasted with loud, unearned authority. Virginia's restrained but decisive moves highlighted how patience and precision often outmaneuver arrogance and impulsivity. Every subtle shift in body language, every hushed comment from nearby passengers, amplified the moral resonance of the moment. Sometimes justice arrives quietly. Have you seen subtle victories? Share below. Virginia Robinson leaned back in her seat as the plane ascended, her calm expression unchanged. Outside the window, the Atlanta skyline receded, its lights blinking like distant stars. Inside, passengers adjusted, some staring thoughtfully out their own windows, others quietly reflecting on what had just unfolded at the gate. The tension that had clung to the cabin lifted subtly, replaced by an almost tangible sense of balance restored. Raymond Long remained seated nearby, his usual arrogance subdued. He avoided eye contact, fingers drumming lightly on his armrest. The authority he had once wielded like a weapon had been quietly neutralized, and he felt the weight of observation pressing down, even without anyone raising their voice. Subtle micro-shifts in posture, slight hesitations in his movements, and the occasional downward glance revealed the internal reckoning he could not express aloud. Passengers murmured softly among themselves, exchanging glances that acknowledged the shift in power and the demonstration of restraint. No dramatic confrontation was necessary. Virginia's presence alone had recalibrated the social and professional equilibrium. The leather folder rested on her lap, a simple tool that had silently commanded respect, while her composed demeanor spoke louder than words ever could. Internal reflections rippled through the cabin. Some passengers considered how easily assumptions and prejudice could disrupt ordinary moments. Others appreciated the quiet victory of intelligence and patience over impulsive authority. The hum of engines blended with the low, reflective whispers of travelers processing the sequence of events, the subtle impact of dignity maintained in public view. Virginia allowed herself a measured glance at her surroundings, acknowledging the soft, approving nods from a few passengers. Each small acknowledgement reinforced the message: composure paired with strategic action creates undeniable authority. The equilibrium was delicate, yet firmly established. Change doesn't shout, it takes presence and persistence. Subscribe to see systemic impacts in action. Colleagues, passengers, and airport staff moved through the terminal in quiet acknowledgement of what had transpired. Whispers followed Virginia Robinson as she walked, each small gesture of recognition a subtle testament to her composure. The ripple extended beyond the boarding gate. In offices and lounges, people discussed the encounter, connecting it to broader conversations about respect, authority, and fairness. Raymond Long's absence was noted without fanfare. His role in the confrontation became a quiet cautionary tale among employees and travelers alike. Procedural reports were filed, emails circulated, and internal meetings discussed the nuances of accountability. The consequences of public mockery paired with unchecked bias were clear, silently reinforcing institutional lessons. Passengers replayed the moments in their minds, the restraint Virginia had maintained, her quiet strategic moves, and the authority that materialized without spectacle. Observers felt the weight of social responsibility, realizing the importance of witnessing bias and allowing justice to emerge, even when subtle. The airport seemed to breathe more evenly, an almost imperceptible calm settling in communal spaces. The cultural impact of the encounter began to take shape. Conversations about systemic fairness, professional respect, and the power of patient action grew louder in personal and professional circles. Each person who reflected on the incident contributed to an unseen chain of influence, an acknowledgement that courage and composure could create tangible change. Have you witnessed a system bending toward accountability? Share your experience below. Virginia Robinson sat quietly by the window of the plane, the city lights of Atlanta stretching below. She folded her hands over her leather folder, reflecting on the subtle moves that had shifted authority in her favor. Each gesture, each measured action, had mattered. She considered how patience, composure, and clear awareness could change outcomes when others relied on force or loudness to assert dominance. The lessons weighed heavily. Real power was often quiet. Recognition came not from yelling or confrontation but from strategy, presence, and unflinching calm. Small, deliberate choices, like typing a message to summon oversight, presenting credentials at the right moment, or holding one's silence under scrutiny, could tilt situations toward fairness. The plane hummed steadily beneath her, a constant rhythm that matched her reflection. In the terminal, staff and passengers began to process what had occurred hours earlier. Conversations linked her actions to broader challenges in professional spaces. People discussed how authority could be abused and how dignity could silently reclaim control. Each acknowledgement added to the chain reaction: systemic awareness, individual accountability, and cultural recognition of fairness. Her gaze shifted to symbolic objects: boarding passes, airport signage, and the flicker of plane lights on polished floors. Every ordinary item held the memory of the encounter, a reminder that quiet courage often left a visible, lasting imprint. The audience understood that actions, no matter how subtle, could influence larger systems. Observers imagined themselves in her place, considering how composure under pressure could create impact without aggression. The subtlety of her strategy was compelling. She had turned a tense, public humiliation into an example of unshakable authority. The moral was universal: systems bend toward accountability when courage acts patiently and deliberately. If you're inspired by ordinary people creating extraordinary change, share your story below and join the conversation, and subscribe now to witness more stories of quiet power and systemic impact. Because the principle is simple: even small, patient choices can change systems, and every action echoes beyond the moment. In administrative offices, emails and memos circulated. Supervisors noted procedural lessons. Accountability processes were reviewed. Staff who had witnessed the boarding gate tension now understood the weight of silent authority. Cultural acknowledgement followed. Colleagues reflected on the subtle acts of courage and the importance of standing firm even when the system seemed tilted. The ripple effect moved outward. Passengers, employees, and city observers internalized the lesson that dignity, strategy, and awareness could shift outcomes. Montages of the terminal, the VIP offices, the plane, and downtown streets stitched together the narrative. Symbolic gestures, the nod of a colleague, the subtle pause of a gate supervisor, the respectful glance of a passenger, told the story without words. Even the smallest actions resonated, illustrating the enduring impact of a single individual's calculated courage in the face of public challenge. Virginia's story, though deeply personal, is a demonstration of how methodical, calm, and measured action can confront bias, restore order, and influence culture. This is Black Uncut Stories, documenting quiet power, real reform, and systemic courage. Your voice, your presence, your choices, each one matters. Share how you plan to act in your community and turn on your notification bell so you do not miss the next uncut story, because when we show up together, systems listen.